It's funny how they kind of mess with our communications when we're talking about silver and the criminality at companies like J.P. Morgan. The amazing thing to me is they've indicted 6 J.P. Morgan traders, and word is that they're going to indict the company as well, and yet they're still allowed to trade the way they do and manipulate markets, and they're still the custodian of the SLV silver.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics, and today is part 2 of my interview with Bix Weir, where we talk about what's been going on with the Fed and then dig into silver, especially as we're continuing the big silver short countdown. The print version of the book is now about 3 weeks away, while the audio version will be ready in about 7 to 10 days, I would say. So Bix was one of the people interviewed in the book, and arrow appearing in your upper right. If you'd like to get a copy of it, I do think you're going to love it. Sorry it's taken as long as it has, but in either case, it's on its way soon. And to tide you over until then, here is part 2 of my interview with Bix. Although, speaking of things that have been less than ideal, obviously you mentioned the Federal Reserve, and I'll tie this into silver in a second. But before we get there, do you get the feeling that something broke in particular last Friday? Because last Thursday we had $1.5 trillion go into the Fed puts into the markets. And I thought it was interesting. By Friday, they said the schedule they had planned to purchase treasuries on, was X amount over a month. And then they're like, we're doing half of it today. It just felt as if maybe something Lehman-like happened on Friday that we're not being told, but that cycle we see now where it's all right, we'll throw $1 trillion in, if that doesn't work, we try $2 trillion the next day. Do you get the feeling that there was something big on Friday in there in particular that happened?
Well, absolutely, yeah. And it goes back to something big happened on September 11th of 2019. That's what started the whole bank repo thing the next Monday. And it's just a takedown of the bad guys. Absolutely. And that's why they unleashed the virus and all that stuff. But there's been 3 big moments. One was September 11th, something happened, and then they bailed out. The repos started the next Monday, Tuesday, because the banks were pretty much toast. They were done. And then the end of the year, they had massive repo going on, and they had to tuck it all into the FICC, which is a division of the DTCC in the repo market. So if you look at the data on who was taking out all these repos, turned out the FICC, which is a clearinghouse within the DTCC, was the largest participant in the repo market. And everyone's like, what is going on here? And then with the data, you can click down and say, oh, it's the normal players. JP Morgan, BlackRock was in there, interestingly, and some of the big banks. But why are they having to go through the FICC to get these repos? And why don't they just do it normally through the central bank? It's because the treasury bonds beneath them that they're using as collateral have multiple owners. And it's the DTC's responsibility to clear all transactions, make sure everybody's doing things by the book. And they dropped the ball years ago, and it's just coming out now. So nobody is willing to take the collateral of the big banks anymore, even though they're treasury bills, because they've been thrown into derivative contracts, and all that is going sideways. So they don't trust overnight money even. And then you're right, something else happened, and it was the understanding that this thing, this coronavirus, is not going to stop, and the supply chain of all goods coming from Asia has stopped and will not open up again. And that's the reason it's not going to open up again, even if China is telling the truth that they have no more coronavirus or whatever they're saying, which I think they're lying. But we're about to go to war with China. I think we'll trade nuclear bombs before we trade any type of goods. China's not going to supply us with any goods. So yes, it's great. We can rebuild our manufacturing base, but to do that, it takes years. I mean, just the machine tools needed to create the parts and the raw materials to build a car takes years and years and years of capital, of time. Most of those machine tools are made in China now anyway. So even the raw materials for a gigantic portion of what we use in high tech come from China as well. And if China is not going to play ball with us because, we're in a fight with them, probably they were trying to take over, and Trump's like, no, no, no. It's going to take years to rebuild even a slightly functioning system. And I don't think a lot of it won't even work because the banking system won't be there to pump artificial funds into this stuff. We're screwed. The old system is dead. And the day they declare it dead will be the day that the banks close up. And I don't see it getting past April.
Wow. So you think it's that close?
Well, they have to declare earnings. And again, and when you're a leveraged lender and you're leveraged 10 to 1 or 100 to 1, if you have derivatives, you're done. When you lose 10%, all your tier 1 capital is gone. And you got to either get a bank bailout or close your doors. So, and that's the majority of banks out there. That's what's going on because they all invest in the same things too at the same time. That's why all the stock market went up for so long. Everybody's told to invest in the same thing, the same stocks, the same bonds, the same allocations. It's all great when it's going up because it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Everybody's doing the same thing. Coming back down is it's like a fire hose and a Dixie cup, and you can't get out. And it's going to keep going down and keep going down and keep going down, even though they're still rigging the markets.
Yeah, and when you talk about investing in the same thing, in the same direction at the same time, of course, you see how I tied that into silver. I can take any conversation, turn it to silver. I've been thinking about a few things from things you've mentioned in your videos, especially when we think about what happened in September. Because also, I mean, in September, we have the repos start. As you pointed out, we have JP Morgan guys getting arrested. Was also maybe a week or two before that, but I think it was September 4th or 5th maybe where silver hit its high and reverted to its normal pricing pattern, which is just, it's funny. I was sending someone a message that tell me something about silver. I said, we're only around 30 cents, which is a good day for silver. But I mean, do you think any of that may have been related to some of these banks that are short silver getting a margin call in early September? Could that have played into whatever led to the repos? And to be clear, this is just a speculation on my part, but curious, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it completely coincided with the JP Morgan traders getting brought up on manipulation charges and then switched over to RICO charges. Now, the RICO charges is racketeering charges, which the penalty is very interesting in racketeering charges. You aren't, it's kind of unlimited as far as how much you can go after someone. But with RICO charges, it's you can sue someone and they'll have to pay 3 times what you stole. So when it comes to silver, and the charges against JP Morgan and gold, they're taking gold. Basically what they're doing is shorting the paper market and taking the physical to get cheap prices, and then they load it up on physical, and then they let the entire system fall apart. So with the RICO charges, JP Morgan, if they do have the 1 billion ounces that Ted Butler says they do, which I think they do, I think they have more, they would have to pay back 3 times that, not in dollar terms, but in silver. So they would have to pay back $3 billion in silver. I think we froze up. I can't hear you on my side. Yeah, it's funny how they kind of mess with our communications when we're talking about silver and the criminality at companies like JP Morgan. The amazing thing to me is they've indicted 6 JP Morgan traders. And word is that they're going to indict the company as well, and yet they're still allowed to trade the way they do and manipulate markets, and they're still the custodian of the SLV silver from BlackRock. BlackRock is a huge part of this manipulation.
And I'm curious, do you think the Department of Justice is aware that the silver price has gotten absolutely torched the last month and that there's a physical shortage of silver? I mean, does that
That's
come
one
up
thing.
in the investigation? Does anybody notice it? I mean, what do you think's going on with that investigation right now?
It's not a secret. I mean, the manipulation was part of the way the United States dealt with everything over the last 100 years. And so the invention of computer modeling, computer trading back in the 60s and 70s, the invention of the current version of the CFTC was at the same time. They were built at the same time. Alan Greenspan was writing the programs for the Federal Reserve System back in the early 1970s, and they set up the CFTC to run cover for the manipulation so they can go off a gold standard because France was trying to take all their gold back. It's all part of the plan. I mean, and when you look back, it's so obvious. But obviously, in the middle of it, when there was less information available, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, gold price went too high," and got crushed. And the Hunt Brothers silver had nothing to do with the Hunt Brothers. The Hunt Brothers, at the most, had 130 million ounces of physical silver, where J.P. Morgan now has over 1 billion ounces. Where's the government? Did the laws change between then and now? It is ridiculous what has been done. And then the real fight right now is between the good guys within the government and J.P. Morgan, Jamie Dimon, and Blythe Masters. Blythe instantly disappeared from her crypto company that was trying to take the place of the DTCC, and that was a little over a year ago. And then Jamie Dimon, did he have a heart attack? Is he in Guantanamo already? Nobody really knows. We do know that it was J.P. Morgan that destroyed the repo market. So what kind of payback's going on behind the scenes? It's really ugly out there. And the biggest problem I have with Trump right now, and the good guys supposedly, is that they're lying. Everybody's lying. Everybody's cheating. Everybody's stealing. There was no recovery. The only recovery in the economy was the market rigging factor of the economy. Every time I see Austin Goolsbee. He's this guy
I
who was,
remember him.
yeah, Obama's one of the guys on the Obama's economic team who was taught by Larry Summers at Harvard about if you build it, they will come type of economies. It's called behavioral finance. And if you pretend things are great, everybody's going to go out and spend, and they will be great. And that's what Trump has been saying. Oh yeah, everything's great, and everybody knows it's complete manipulation and bullshit. And he hasn't stopped lying. So if there's anything I'm going to blame Trump for, it's continuing the lie. And this whole coronavirus, if it is a bioweapon unleashed by the bad guys, it didn't have to be this way. They could have ended this system years ago, decades ago. They should have ended it back in 1913. So we're having to pay the price for what our ancestors passed on. And I have no intention of passing this on to the next generation. So we need to end it now. And that's kind of what's going on. There is no way out of it. We need to end this now and start something honest and truthful and something we can be proud of instead of something we have to hide.
I hear you, and that's why I think there's a lot of others that fit into this. Sure, appreciate what you share on your channel, and I mean it's kind of nice getting. I get my Wall Street Journal alerts, but I also get my Bix alerts, so I know at least one of them is going to be real. So Bix,
play off the two. Say, who's right this week?
Yeah. Well, final question for you before we wrap up here. This should be a fun one. I asked you this maybe it was almost a year ago, but maybe we'll get an update today. Your thoughts on Cliff High's $600 silver forecast, and how about you give if you feel like it, of course, what is Bix's silver prediction for July 1st of this year?
Well, okay. First, we'll go for the Cliff High $600, which I talked to him about when he did a special screening for my Litecoin Summit event, and he said, "Yeah, $600 is in the cards right after we go through this bump." And he said, "But you're not going to want to live in a $600 silver world." And I'm like, "Holy shit!" Well, back then, that was September of last year that he did that interview with me. Back then, I'm like, Well, yeah, sure I would. I got $600 for my silver, and I'm doing
Yeah.
fine. And now I'm looking at, holy shit, he's right again. The world that I see coming down the pike, nobody's going to want to live in. So yes, I do think $600 silver is right around the corner, but it's not going to be in a world that we want to live in. I do not. When you said, okay, what is it, July 1st? You want to know the price of silver?
Or if you have another date that is interesting to think about, but
it's a good a date as any date, truthfully. If the COMEX is still up and running, yes, it will be under control. It will be with trading within $12 and $18, and because it's under control. The moment the COMEX ends, stops trading, which I think is coming, is approaching very fast, and all these exchanges go down, then we can start with, okay, we need to create a new exchange for metals and the stock market, the bond market, new exchanges where the real thing is traded for real dollars, whatever the new dollar is at that point in time. If people think that's a cop-out answer because it doesn't give an answer, the future of silver, I would say you can equate 4-to-1 with gold. I think we'll hit the 4-to-1 ratio. In the ground, I think it's 8-to-1, but there's, obviously silver is more necessary in the high-tech future that we're running into. So I think the 8-to-1 is probably a little high for a natural price discovery of gold versus silver. I think it'll go to 4-to-1. Then we have all the gold in the Grand Canyon. That type of stuff could run it like 1-to-1. 1 ounce of silver would equate to 1 ounce of gold. And then where would gold price be? It depends if the system stayed together. Depends if the COMEX is still up and running. Today it should be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 an ounce, and that would put silver at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 an ounce. Silver's much, much more important metal, especially with the cryptos now serving Bitcoin serves an even better store of value than gold, I believe, these days. So, that's arguable with the gold bugs, but for me, the future is, if you want to buy gold today, buy a lot of silver now at 120-to-1 ratio, and then swap it for gold later when the ratio settles in. I can't.
Yeah, and who would have figured we'd be seeing? Well, are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, now I can.
I mean, it's like, who would have figured we'd be seeing a 120, 125 gold to 1 gold to silver ratio yet? Nonetheless, that is where we stand.
They could set the price with the computer programs on the COMEX. They can set the price to 0 and shut down the market. We got to keep in mind that it's not the real price of silver that we're looking at. It's a construct of a computer program invented in the 1960s.
Yep. And like you pointed out throughout the call today, I think how we treat each other, how we react to things, I don't know, maybe we'll be doing YouTube a month from now, or maybe we'll be finding out how to get food from point A to point B. I found there's, in some strange ways, something about it that's a little bit peaceful to me, where it's like all the things I normally worry about, we're seeing them change. And I guess the one thing we can control is how we treat each other and respect ourselves. And appreciate just the way you present a lot of challenging information for folks, but in a positive way, and all that you do. And just wrapping up, if you could mention the site where people can find you and all that.
Sure. I'm doing most of my work on YouTube. So it's Road to Ruta YouTube channel. And then I have a website, roadtoruta.com, and Patreon channels. It's at Road to Ruta or just Road to Ruta. Everything's Road to Ruta, which is the name of a Federal Reserve Bank of Boston set of comic books and instructions on how to leave the old system and get onto a gold monetary system.
Never been more timely than now. Links for all that in the description below. Bix, thanks so much. Always great to catch up with you, and we'll have plenty to talk about this year.
Absolutely. Be safe.